Hey everyone, we're back at it with another one here. We got a pair of Allen Edmonds Gobis. They're not a very popular or commonly seen ankle-high boot from Allen Edmonds, even in the Allen Edmonds Enthusiast Group. But the gentleman who brought them in, he's got a pretty good collection of them, and they're pretty cool. So I thought, let's go ahead and do a video on these. He kind of wants a video too, but I think it's still a cool one for me to do regardless. So let's go ahead and get it started. So we'll just start kind of breaking it down, and I'll explain as I'm breaking down. So these Gobis, we're not 100% sure off the top of our head, but because this gentleman has a bunch of them, there were some pairs that he actually even ordered all the way from Japan and had them shipped over here, even though they are an American-made brand. It's still kind of interesting to hear that there were some that he ended up ordering all the way out there just because he couldn't find a pair here for himself. Now I don't know if it was this one exactly or if it was one of his other ones that were also Gobis, but he's got a handful of them, and it's a pretty cool collection of the Gobis that he has. I have to use a little bit of solvent, otherwise that heel base is trying to split. So now the Gobis are a little bit different. Most of the boots that you see from Allen Edmonds, if they're a boot especially, they tend to have a midsole with a Dainite sole. These ones don't. These are just the sole on its own without the Dainite. Now, most other times we'll see shoes that don't have a midsole and Dainite combination, but this is kind of like right in between a shoe and a boot almost, just because it's such a low ankle-high boot. So I guess you can call it a shoe or a boot, and throughout the video I might call it one or the other, and that I kind of just disclose that to everyone. Alright, make sure I get that pried off. This one's pretty on here, and it's because of the amount of nails that are going through these bases, actually. Surprisingly, there's quite a few. I'll show you guys in a second, or maybe even the camera might be catching it already. But you see the little nail heads? We've got those nails, but there are actually nails sticking out on this end. So that means that they did nail it from the inside as well on this one, which some Allen Edmonds models don't have that actually. Most of them are actually nailed from the outside. This one is nailed outside and inside, so kind of both. And then I know there's got to be a few people in the, that are going to be watching this saying, why is he getting them resold? He still has plenty of wear. Well, they're worn down to a degree already, and yes, he could probably wear them just a little while longer, but everyone's different. I mean, we get plenty of new boots and shoes that people will send directly to us from the store and want us to tear everything off and have it redone the way they want it to. And this gentleman definitely loves the Gobis, and he wants it done the way he wants to. He's still just getting a Dainite sole, but he's getting it channeled as well, so it gives him a nice upgrade to have that on there. He's got a few others. He's got another pair up here that I'm working on re-welting. Make sure to cover up his ticket. But he's got a pair of the new Mach 2.0s that we've got the welt removed. We're going to be putting a lighter colored welt. I'm not doing a video on this one. After the lighter colored welt, we're doing a red Dainite sole, so it's going to be a pretty cool finish on those. Man, this heel block is really on here, so let me go ahead and get that heel block off, and I'll be back in a second. Alright, so we've got the heel block off. So here are those nails that I was talking about that go into the heel base from the outside. And then looks like we got 6 more, but they're kind of right here towards the front of where the heel was. There's 1, 2, and 3 on each side, right where my fingers are. It's right there. And so those help actually quite a bit, keeping that base on, because this is a fiberboard and it's being adhered to rubber. Rubber shifts around differently, obviously, than fiberboard, and so it's kind of a pretty cool feature that we don't see too commonly on a lot of Allen Edmonds, actually. They, majority of the time, have been either nailing them just from the inside or just nailing them from the outside these days. But these ones, because they have the insole, they did both on them. Definitely ups the quality build on these for sure. I have to use my heel pry real quick to start the welt separation because it's kind of a tight squeeze. There we go. Sometimes we use the heel pry just to kind of pry it open. So yeah, sometimes we're able to get the knife just right in like that and start cutting through the stitches and separating the sole. Other times we gotta use the heel pry to wedge under there and get things kind of going smoothly. One of the benefits of also, well, at least in our case for the Cobblers, when we deal with a midsole, the midsoles are usually stiffer than the soles, and so we can actually split and cut through a lot easier than if it's just the sole to the welt. But other times we gotta do this here, and we'll cut through the sole a little bit here and there, which a few spots I did. Right here, there's a little chunk of the rubber sole right there. Alright everyone, so first things first, I'm going to show real quick. So these bases were just coming apart way too much. I had like chunks that were wanting to break off everywhere, so I'm honestly just going to trash them. I'll hang on to them for a few so I can use them as a pattern, but we're gonna have to replace the heel bases and put one of these ones. These are actually Allen Edmonds heel blocks here, so they're a little bit thicker on the inside portion, so there is a left and a right always. So I'm just gonna keep the old ones to trace out for the new ones, but I want to show you guys this real quick. Make sure I get a little bit of thinner. So the first one I already have it apart, and I can show you guys inside here in a second, but I want to show you the second one. So the first one I did the traditional way that we usually do it, where we cut through the stitches with a knife. This one is a different method that we also do, where we sand the stitches. So I've sanded out all these edges all around the perimeter, and now I can grab some pliers. This is usually a lot easier to do. It's just afterwards pulling the stitches sometimes can be a little problematic, but we shouldn't have too many problems with these ones, thankfully. Look at how easy that came off right there. So there's the cork. It looks like there's a good amount of cork there. So yeah, I think the cork was pretty good in these guys. Sometimes with the Allen Edmonds, because they use the hot cork method, there's a little bit of a problem with a good amount of cork in there, or too much, too little. Same thing with this side here. So this is the one that we cut. You can probably see, I don't know if the camera's catching it, but right here there's small chunks of rubber soling left behind because I had to cut through the sole. I'd rather cut through the sole than obviously the welt, because we're not re-welting these ones. But I thought I'd show you real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out these nails here from the inside that are sticking out. I clipped them originally when the soles were still on, and now I need to punch them through so they come out on the inside of the boot on this end here, so I don't damage anything or have as minimal damage as possible. And then we'll pull the stitches. I'm going to see if I can try to pull this stitch out as best I can as a one piece, and we can see just how long the thread is to stitch a pair of soles on like this is. So let me get that going, and we'll see you back here in a few. Alright, so I got the thread out and it kind of ripped on me in some areas in the back of the heel, unfortunately, but I was able to measure out all the chunks and everything, and it was 74.5 inches. Marcus just did the math for me real quick, but it's over 6'2" worth of just string on the top area of the welt. Just the top area. Doesn't include the bottom thread because that's a completely different area. Or let me grab the other sole right there. So roughly about the same on the bottom one, maybe just a little bit less in some cases. It depends on how the machine is tuned up and everything. So thought it'd be kind of a fun fact for you guys to know. One other thing I'll kind of point out, so all welt always has a beginning and end area. So you have this little split right here. That's a connecting point for the welt. Now welt can't be one solid piece either because it comes in rolls that are hundreds of feet long, and so they're basically spliced into each other to connect, and not only the ends of the welt and everything, but you may end up coming across that. So on this welt here, we've got two splits. We've got one here and one here, and that's actually very normal and very common. So if you ever see that, don't worry, don't freak out. That's very common, very normal to have a split like that. I wonder if I have split welds here with a notch like that. Let's see. This one? No, looks like not on any of these chunks that I've got at the moment. But it's more common than not that you'll find one, at least somewhere. I'm trying to find one for you guys, and man, I guess I got some good welt chunks here this time that don't have any splits. So let me go ahead and clean out the cork. The shanks look like they're good and intact. I saw a little while ago somebody posted on the Allen Edmonds Enthusiast page asking about which model has steel shanks, which one doesn't. Marcus actually, I think, tagged me in it. And Allen Edmonds do not use steel shanks, only some of the very, very vintage, and we're talking 30 plus years old vintage, and only a few models had steel shanks. Otherwise they used wood all the time, no shanks, or they used these other ones, which I don't even know if I have one up here, but they're a different type. It's not even technically a shank, it's this little piece that goes back here. We'll still categorize it as a shank, but it's designed to hold nails in, and this one had a wood one on it. So if you're ever wondering about airport security or whatever, they're all wood shanks, unless you've had them resold and a cobbler put a steel one in there. A lot of times we'll put a steel one in as well, but with Allen Edmonds, I'm trying to actually find some more fiberglass ones instead as well, so we don't have the steel ones. Lately I haven't had to replace any shanks, thankfully. The fiberglass is the way I go, though, in that case. Alright, everyone. So it's a little bit of a mess on the workspace just because I've got a lot going on right now. But I've got the cork filled in. The shank is inside here. You might be able to see a little small chunk of it. I just pulled this out of the oven, so I kind of have to stick it quickly. Now, typically, I would trace out the sole so that it fits just right. But this sole is such a tight squeeze on these already that there really isn't much to cut off, in other words, to get it lined up as much as possible and stuff. So there we go. Hammered that down the center, helps get all those little air pockets out. And I definitely like to make sure to go over these nubs because sometimes even the press might not be able to press those out well enough. And now at this stage I'm going to go ahead and run this over to the press, let it cure for a little while, and then we can move on. I gotta show this, I don't know why, but to me it's kind of satisfying using one of these hook blades. I gotta cut off a little bit of that extra. Some cobblers use a lip knife, kind of like one of these guys here, or they use the cutter wheel. It's a hand-operated cranked table machine, I guess you could say, and it cuts it. But this I like because it cuts so close, it's so smooth and everything. If the blade gets dull, I could just change it out. Sharpening a lip knife takes a little bit of time, and I usually try to dedicate it for cutting out the brister part of the heel. So the brister part is this inside part of the heel, so right here. Sometimes you got a little extra, and I'll get in here and be able to cut it out nice and thoroughly with that knife there. Obviously we still sand it out, we'll trim it and everything, but if there's a lot, it's good to cut it all off. So this gives that little squeaky sound. Some people hate that squeaky sound, some people like it. I don't really care for the squeaky sound, but it doesn't bother me either. There we go. All that extra little bit that we don't have to deal with sanding. So now I'm going to go ahead and sand that up, and we'll move on to the channeling, because these are going to get a channeled stitch. Channeled means that we're going to go ahead and cut out a channel, and then the stitching will sit inside of it, where traditionally, or not traditionally, but most companies, they're going to just stitch it over top. So here's another Allen Edmonds that we have here. So see how the stitch sits inside of a channeled groove section here? That's what we're going to do, but on a rubber sole. From the factory, rubber soles don't get channeled. It's usually only cobblers that could do that, and only a handful of them that I know of that even bother doing it. Most cobblers will not even attempt it. But yeah, this gentleman definitely wants it channeled, and we're going to go ahead and do that for him. So let's get that. Alright everyone, so we've got everything stitched up with the blue thread in there, you can see. Definitely wanted to add a little bit of color. Obviously we couldn't really put up top there and stuff, but now we're at the heel base stage. Marked them just as a precaution, although I can tell which one's which. Everything, this thicker edge here needs to go on the inside area of the sole right here, but just as a precaution, I'm just gonna write it down on there that it's left and right, because there's a lot going on all the time, and cobblers make mistakes sometimes, you know. Sometimes we accidentally put the wrong combination heel, like a JR Dainite heel. We can end up mixing them up, and I've seen it happen countless times, not just by me, but other cobblers as well, and it's not avoidable. too easily, because if we got a lot going on, we might accidentally do that. So I got the heel base on. We are going to go ahead and peel off this black layer right there, just because it's not needed, since we're doing a Dainite heel on these, and also it helps reduce the thickness because these Dainite heels are fairly thick. Plus, as proof, the heel bases didn't have that on there either. They do that at the factory whenever they put the Dainite heels on, just because they're thicker. So let me get this on the press, let it cure, and we'll continue on. Alright everyone, so we've got the top lift on and everything, and I was about to nail it. So from the factory, these nails, they ran through the heel base and everything, but I want to really show you that it's fine. It's normal to do, but usually only when that little black piece is there, and when there's a midsole also. But I checked the length and everything of the nails, so our nails are exactly the same length as the ones from the factory. However, the sole, in comparison to the thickness of the heel block, the sole, and that there's no midsole, there's a pretty good chance that some areas of the nails may poke through the foot over a period of time. Now, as you saw, the sole, the person who owns these, he didn't quite wear them to that kind of level yet, but eventually the insole cushioning and everything will start to break down and wear out, and then the nail starts to poke through. So what I usually like to do is actually just run the nails through the top lift and into the heel base and everything. I did run some nails in from the inside already, kind of like they had before on these, and actually a few extras on the back too. So the heel block is well secured, and now these nails that we're going to put through, they're going to go through the top lift, the heel block, and into the sole a little bit, without that possibility of it poking through down the road. Now, it won't happen on your first set of soles, or maybe on your second set of soles it may happen, but not 100%. But it's not a risk that I'd be wanting to put this gentleman through, having those nails pop through. Now, if they did have a midsole, that'd be no problem whatsoever then to run the nails through the heel block and not through the top lift like we are right now. So since this is his second set of soles, it's good to be cautious. I don't expect anything to happen, but I'd rather be a little more on the cautious side and, not have him get stabbed in the foot or anything like that. So we're using gripper nails, running those in, and then see they go further down in when I punch them through with this tool. So they're going through the heel block and into the sole. And I've checked the lengths all around, and it works out perfect actually. Sometimes we get a stubborn one. There it goes. Plus, this helps keep that heel block, or the top lift, attached better. There's usually not too many issues with it peeling off, but adds a little extra layer of strength, in other words. So I'm going to let these cool just a little while longer, and then we're going to go ahead and start trimming. Oh, real quick, I want to also show you guys. Remember that lip knife I was talking about? So this is what we're talking about. There's usually a lot left over. Sometimes if we're trying to line up that heel and everything, we don't want this section overlapping too much. So there's going to be a little bit left over here. And I just cut off some of that so I don't have to deal with as much sanding. And plus, sanding creates friction, which creates heat and can deactivate the adhesives. Only problem is sometimes that rubber gets a little stretchy and everything in some areas, and so we can't cut it as well. But there we go. Gives us a little bit of that rough finish there that we'll sand up later on. All right, everyone. So going ahead and done the edges on these there. So they're all ready to go, basically. Only step is that I did blow off the dust and brush it up a little bit with a nylon brush. I'm going to use some neutral Saphir Renovateur for suede. It's got some of that almond oil in there. Helps condition that quite a bit. There we go. Gives it a light layer of protection against elements. Something that's going to be a little bit stronger is going to be the Saphir Super Invulner is what it's called. It's a waterproofer as well. However, that stuff's a little backordered at the time of this recording, because obviously it's imported. Saphir's products come in from France, but or Paris, sorry, but it's just been backordered for quite some time. Now the one that I like to use is the Tarago Nano, but the Tarago Nano is a little bit on the stronger side. If the plan is that you're going to be doing a lot of caring and maintaining for your shoes, you're going to use something a little bit lighter like the Saphir, in other words, but the Tarago Nano is going to be a little bit stronger for the shoes that you're going to wear in more mucky type conditions. Now I'm going to check with the gentleman when he comes by. Waterproofing doesn't take too long, and when he comes by for them, I'll see if he wants us to use that or another water-based waterproofer, since the Saphir currently is out of stock at the moment. The water-based one that we use is the Four Seasons brand, which I don't have one on hand to show you, but it's somewhere around the shop. We've got tons of cans all over the place, but regardless, I'd still need to let this dry anyways. And yeah, so that was the process of that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video on a pair of these Allen Edmonds, why did I just space out on the name on them? Gobi. Yeah, that's what they were. It's worn out pretty bad. Pair of Gobis, in other words. Yeah, it's pretty simple, straightforward on these, but it's still a very cool pair to be able to work on and stuff, just because they're not very common. And it kind of shows a little bit of a difference, especially considering that since this one's almost like in between a boot and a shoe, it has no midsole in it. It's just a little more plain and low profile. In other words, if you have a pair of Gobis and you want to make them bigger and heftier, you could definitely have midsoles added in there, whether it's leather or composite. One of the colored Vibram ones too, which would be pretty cool to put a blue one in there, for sure on these ones. The blue stitching was something I just kind of threw on there for him and stuff. This guy just kind of says do whatever. He does have certain requests sometimes, and then other times it's kind of like whatever almost. But now they're a little more unique and one of a kind, but I'm kind of concerned about some of these stitches now right there. See how they're starting to split? I might have to double check and maybe secure them and stitch them, but I'm still going to let that Saphir sit and cure for a little bit. Maybe put a little small tack stitches in there. That's why they have that little box stitch there. Kind of is supposed to reinforce it, but it looks like it's not hanging in there as well as we'd want it to. So I'll let it sit and dry overnight, and then I'll do that tomorrow morning for him if so as well. But otherwise, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Shorter questions preferably. I've been a little behind on those, so if you really want to get a hold of me quicker for any kind of questions, definitely shoot us a message on Facebook or Instagram. My notifications for that is on emails. Take a little while. I had to shut off notifications for that as well, just because there's a lot of spam going on, and it was just crazy how much the phone was going off with the notifications. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.